So one of my favorite things in the world is seeing a brand new startup company release a product into the wild, get customer feedback on some of the things that they could improve on, and then actually act upon that customer feedback and improve on pretty much every single thing that people wanted them to improve on. And that's exactly what the people over at Clicks Keyboard did with their V2 of the Clicks Keyboard. I just got back from some hands-on time with their new version, and I have some initial impressions. Let's get into it. Now, if you guys want to see my initial review on the V1, definitely check out the link down below and you guys can see exactly what I thought about it back then. And before everybody goes into the comments and starts to think like, oh, we're going back in time, or who would want such a big case, or who would want to add a physical keyboard to their iPhone, I already think you know who you are if this is a case that you are considering, so that's what this video is for. It's for those people that want to get their hands on a physical keyboard for their iPhone, whether it is for nostalgic purposes or actual use cases or efficiency. So that is who this is for. But I definitely want to touch on some of the improvements that they made because they definitely made a bunch of them. And the first thing that I noticed when I got into the room and I saw the V2 of the Clicks Keyboard is just that the fit and finish and overall kind of construction of it was definitely updated and the aesthetic just got a little bit better. So with the first version, everything was very rubbery, everything was very malleable for good reasons, and the malleability still stays in there to a certain extent. But the first thing I noticed was those brushed metal buttons on the side of the brand new one versus kind of like these mushy, just fabric-y like rubber buttons that the first one has. So these are made for the new 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max, so it does take into account the camera control button, but on the left-hand side you have the volume rocker for both up and down, and then of course for your action button, and these are individual keys, and the brushed metal buttons are just a great aesthetic for this, so you actually get some tactility with these buttons. And you do have a cover for the lock button as well, and then they went with a pill cutout for the camera control button with kind of a two-stage approach so you have a good feeling as to where exactly it is. And in that regard, with the camera control button, because you are adding an actual keyboard to the bottom of the phone, when you're holding the phone in portrait mode, it actually makes for a much more comfortable holding position ergonomically where you are actually touching the camera control button with your thumb versus not having this case on here, because if you're just dealing with the iPhone by itself, it's kind of an awkward spot for both in portrait and landscape orientation. It's a little too low in portrait mode, and then it's a little too far into the phone itself in landscape orientation, so having the Clicks Keyboard case on there makes it actually more comfortable to use the camera control button, at least in portrait mode. In landscape mode, it's kind of a lost cause either way, whether you have the case on it or not, but again, in portrait mode, at least it makes it a little bit nicer. The next thing you notice is that when you don't have the phone on there, the inside of the case itself now has this beautiful, nice, soft microfiber finish on there to protect the rear of the phone. But the second thing you notice is that they added MagSafe magnets. And that was my first critique with the first iteration, that there was no MagSafe magnets, and we've built these ecosystem with standing magnetic chargers in all your MagSafe wallets and power banks, and although the magnets still kind of came through a little bit with the first version, and now adding MagSafe magnets directly onto the case is definitely something that we welcome with the V2, because now we can still use our 3-in-1 stands that give you standby mode, and it still supports that. You can add your wallets onto the bag, your MagSafe battery packs, and any other MagSafe accessories that you have, so you no longer have to take off the case if you want to use a certain MagSafe accessory, especially for somebody like me who uses their iPhone as their main camera. And then I sat down for a while and actually had a little bit of a typing experience, and then you notice that the keys are actually different both in shape, in size, and how they are ergonomically. So with the first version, it was kind of just one flat size. They were all level with each other. They were just these circular buttons. They definitely worked and they definitely served their purpose, but the new ones, they actually increased the size of each key by about 9%, they stated, but they also changed the overall shapes and the aesthetic of the key. So now they have this nice little slope design, which not only make them feel bigger because they are physically bigger, but because of the way that they're sloped and the ergonomics of it all, it makes it feel like it's a much bigger surface area on a per key basis. So I do like that. The typing experience was better overall. Not that I was wanting a better typing experience, I thought the first one was still fine, but there was something about the ergonomics of the second one that even made it a more pleasant experience overall. So I'm sure a lot of R&D went into figuring out what the actual shape should be and how much they should slope and how high and how tall these keys should be. But overall, I do like the change in the V2. And they also changed up some of the buttons overall. So now the enter key, instead of being the size of 2 individual keys, is now the size of 1 normal key. And then they also added a different button that replaced the actual tab button, and they called it the clicks button, which adds another layer of controllability and customization and shortcuts that you can add into it, which we'll touch on in a little bit. And of course, the keyboard is still backlit, and what I like about it is now you have a backlight control on the keyboard itself, so you no longer have to go into the actual application to modify and customize how high or low you want your brightness setting of the backlit keyboard. But for me, the absolute biggest change and the best new update to the V2 is that USB-C port on the Clicks keyboard. With the first Clicks keyboard, you did have a USB-C port for power pass-through, so you were able to physically charge your iPhone through the Clicks keyboard. But if you're like me, and like I mentioned, my iPhone is my main camera, and I use it all the time for footage, and I offload that footage via the USB-C port to an SSD. So now the new Clicks keyboard does support data pass-through, and even though my situation is a little bit niche and not everybody does what I do, it is nice to at least now everybody knows that you can actually pass data through there. But a much bigger use case was CarPlay. If you still had wired CarPlay, it was impossible to use CarPlay with the first version of the Clicks keyboard, so now people don't have to take out their iPhone every single time they get into the car, which did make it tedious and made people not want to use it all the time, and then you forgot about it, and less people used it. But now, no need to worry about that. There is a shortcut that you actually have to input on the keyboard itself, because it is a kind of a physical switch inside of it that needs to change. You know, big brain things that I'm not very privy to, but now you are able to actually change that in real time. So just be aware that if you do go into data mode to transfer data or to go into CarPlay mode, it's not going to charge your device, but you can switch in between them. So you can go from charging to data mode and vice versa. And they did let me know that unfortunately it does not support wired in headphones via USB-C, no matter what situation you're in. So if you really do like USB-C headphones and you like to be physically wired in, the Clicks keyboard does not support audio going out of the USB-C port. And I do want to save all the software stuff for my overall review, because I will be getting my hands on one next week, and I do want to play with it in my day-to-day life for a little while before I give you guys my full review. This is my hands-on initial impressions of the brand new version, but they did add a new layer on here with that new Clicks button, whereas before, of course you had your native shortcuts like being able to press the Command and spacebar to go into Spotlight and bring up multitasking, you know, all the normal keyboard shortcuts that you would expect to have on iPadOS and macOS, now we're living on iOS because of the physical keyboard. But then they also added different layers of shortcuts, so now you have pretty much an infinite canvas and an infinite amount of ways to bring up different shortcuts depending on the situations that you're in, because you have different layers and different layered approaches based on the different shortcuts that you're holding down. So that's what the new Clicks button can do for you. I did get some cool demos like being able to turn on your smart home lights and being able to turn on your Sonos speaker just by the click of a couple of buttons on the keyboard, which I thought was very cool. So I'm sure people can and will go crazy with it, and the Clicks application will give you some basic shortcuts to easily download and install and implement right away, so you don't have to go through the tedious situation of creating and finding out how to create these shortcuts on your own. So my overall consensus, and I go back to what I said in the beginning, you know for the most part who you are if you're looking for a case like this and if you would enjoy a case like this. It will add a little bit of bulk to your phone like I mentioned, although with the 16 Pro and the new fits and finish and the way that it kind of like balances itself out, it's actually a very slim and easy to use package. Even with the 16 Pro Max, it is a large phone, but you already are using a large phone, so what's a little bit of a larger surface area to be able to then use the physical keys and have that whole 6.9-inch display. I always think that the good is going to outweigh the bad here, excuse the pun with that weight reference, but again, overall I do like the package. I love how they improved on everything from the V1 to the V2. And I'm just excited for people to get their hands on it to see exactly what they think overall. And this is going to come in 3 different colorways to start off. It's going to be available for the 16 Pro and the 16 Pro Max in a black colorway. And then they also have an orangish, which is called the Spice colorway. And then this kind of like nice blue hue, which is called the Surf. The 16 Pro is $139 and the 16 Pro Max version is $159, with the black version shipping at the end of October, I believe October 28th, and the colored version shipping in the first week of November. And then eventually they are making a 16 and a 16 Plus version for those people that went with those phones. They just have to figure out the camera cutout situation is what I was told. So whether you want a physical keyboard for efficiency's sake, or you miss the old BlackBerry days, or you're just nostalgic, or you just want a different experience and you want to feel a little bit different from everybody having the same exact slab phone, I definitely think the Clicks keyboard is worth a shot if you are looking for a solution like that. So definitely check them out. They will link them down below. Shout out to them for giving me some hands-on time, and like I mentioned, stay tuned for a full review coming later on. But that'll do it, everybody. If you made it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end. And if you guys want to watch more videos like this one, YouTube thinks you'll like this video right here, and I think you're gonna like this video down here. But that'll do it, everybody. Shout out to Clicks for letting me get a first hands-on look and first impressions of this thing. I'm excited to try it out. Peace, everybody.